The wind bites my cheeks as I stand atop the ridge, goggles fogged slightly at the edges from my own breath. At 51, I still feel the pull of these mountains, the Bitterroot Range stretching out like a jagged spine beneath a sky heavy with gray. Powderhorn Resort has been my refuge since Thane was small, a place where the snow swallows the noise of the world and leaves me with nothing but the rush of the descent. My auburn hair, threaded with silver now, whips loose from under my knit cap, and I plant my poles, scanning the slope below. It's steep, dusted fresh with powder, and my heart kicks up a notch, the way it always does before I let go. "Ready, Ma." Thane's voice cuts through the howl of the wind, low and laced with that teasing edge I've known since he was a kid. I glance at him, my son 19 now, all sharp lines and restless energy. He's beside me, a tall shadow in his black ski gear, helmet tilted just enough to show the grin tugging at his lips. His breath puffs out in little clouds, and his dark eyes catch the faint light filtering through the overcast sky, glinting like the ice on the pines. "Always," I reply, keeping my tone light but firm, the way I've done for years to match his playfulness with a bit of steel. I push off before he can say more, my skis slicing into the snow with a soft hiss, the slope dropping fast beneath me. The world blurs into white and gray, the cold stinging my face as I lean into the turn, muscle memory guiding me down. Thane's a flicker at my side, then ahead. His form sharper, his turns tighter. His laughter trailing back to me like an echo off the cliffs. He's fast, fearless, the way he's always been, and I feel that familiar swell in my chest. Pride, yes, but something else too, something I can't quite name. We've come here alone this winter, just the two of us, leaving behind the usual chaos of my sister's brood crowding the cabin. It's been 8 years since I split from Cal, Thane's dad, a slow unraveling after too many years of drifting apart. These trips to Powderhorn became our thing after that, a thread tying us together when life started pulling him away. First to high school, then to Boise State for engineering, and all the late-night parties that came with it. I'm still in Missoula, freelancing graphic design, keeping the house warm for when he swings back. This year, I half expected him to say no when I suggested the resort. Too old now, maybe, for a week with his mom in the mountains. But he'd grinned over the phone, eyes lighting up even through the screen, and said, "Hell yeah, Ma, let's do it." That eagerness stuck with me, a quiet ache I couldn't shake. The run flattens out near the base, a wide bowl of snow ringed by lodges and the distant clank of lifts. I slow, my skis scraping to a stop, and plant my poles, catching my breath as the cold seeps through my jacket. Thane coasts in beside me, spraying powder across my boots. His cheeks flushed pink beneath his goggles. He yanks them off, shaking snow from his dark hair, and that grin widens, boyish but edged with something sharper now that he's 19. "You're still fast, Ma. Thought I'd lose you up there." I smirk, tugging my scarf down from my mouth. "Takes more than a little speed to shake me, kid." My voice carries that dry bite I've honed over years of wrangling him, half jest, half challenge. He laughs, a deep, easy roll of sound, and leans on his poles, his gaze lingering on me a beat too long. "Guess I'll have to try harder tomorrow." There's that spark again in his eyes, playful sure, but with a weight I can't quite place. I brush it off, chalking it up to his youth, that restless energy he's always carried. My gloves creak as I adjust them, and I nod toward the lodge. "Hot chocolate's calling. You buying?" "Only if you say pretty please first," he teases, already gliding toward the timber building, its windows glowing amber against the creeping dusk. Inside, the air wraps around me, thick with wood smoke and cinnamon, the hum of voices rising over the hearth's crackle. I peel off my cap, shaking out my hair, and sink into a cushioned chair by the fire, letting the warmth seep into my bones. Thane comes back with 2 steaming mugs, setting mine down with a little flourish. "Extra marshmallows. Don't say I don't spoil you." I take it, the heat soaking through my gloves, and arch a brow. "You're too good to me, Thane. What's the catch?" "No catch," he says, dropping into the seat across from me, stretching his long legs toward the flames. "Just figured you deserved it after keeping up with me out there." His tone's casual, but his eyes flick to mine again, steady and warm, and I feel that prickle again. A shift, subtle but real, like the first crack of ice underfoot. I sip the hot chocolate, the sweetness melting on my tongue, and try to ignore the way his gaze lingers. "You're not wrong," I say, keeping it light. "I'm still in the game." He chuckles, leaning back, and for a while we just sit. Firelight dancing across his face, the room buzzing around us. But that look stays with me, tugging at something deep, something I tell myself is just the glow of having him here after too many months apart. The next morning dawns sharp and cold, the cabin windows frosted over, the peaks outside glinting under a rare burst of sun. I'm up early, brewing coffee in the tiny kitchen, the scent filling the air as Thane stumbles in, hair mussed, wearing a faded Boise State sweatshirt that hangs loose on his frame. "Morning, Ma," he mumbles, grabbing a mug from the cupboard. His arm brushing mine as he reaches past me. "Morning," I say, stepping aside, though the space is tight and his warmth lingers where he touched me. "Sleep okay?" "Like a rock," he says, pouring coffee, then flashing me that grin. "You?" "Same." It's a lie. I tossed half the night, restless, the mountain air doing little to settle me. I don't tell him that, though. Instead, I sip my coffee and watch him move. Easy, confident, like he owns the place. He's not the little boy who'd cling to me on these trips anymore. And that shift hits me harder than I expect. We gear up after breakfast, the cabin creaking as we pull on jackets and boots. The slopes are calling, and I feel that itch again, the need to move, to lose myself in the rush. Thane's ahead of me as we trudge to the lift, skis slung over our shoulders, the snow crunching underfoot. The chairlift sways as we settle in, the ground dropping away, and I glance at him. His profile sharp against the white expanse, breath puffing out in little bursts. "Bet I can beat you down this time," he says, nudging me with his elbow. His voice bright with challenge. "Dream on," I shoot back, grinning despite myself. "You've got youth, but I've got experience." "We'll see," he says, and there's that look again, warm, teasing, but with an edge that makes my pulse skip. The lift dumps us at the top of a black diamond run. Steep, narrow, lined with pines that cast long shadows across the snow. I adjust my goggles, the wind tugging at my scarf, and Thane's already poised, ready to drop. "Go!" he calls, and we're off, skis cutting into the powder, the slope a blur beneath us. He's fast, faster than yesterday. His form sleek and sure as he weaves through the turns. I push harder, leaning into the descent, my thighs burning as I match him. The cold whips past, stinging my face, but I feel alive, wild, free, the way I only do up here. Thane's ahead, then beside me, our paths crossing as we carve the snow. I catch his eye mid-run, and he grins, fierce and bright, before pulling ahead again. Halfway down, the slope dips into a tight chute, flanked by trees, the snow deeper here, untouched. I slow, picking my line, but Thane's reckless. He barrels through, spraying powder, his laughter ringing out. Then he misjudges a turn, his skis catching an edge, and he goes down hard, tumbling into the snow with a muffled thud. "Thane!" I shout, skidding to a stop above him, my heart lurching as I kick off my skis and wade through the powder. He's sprawled on his back, snow dusting his jacket, but he's laughing, breathless, unhurt, his goggles crooked. "I'm good, Ma," he says, sitting up as I reach him. His voice warm with amusement. "Just ate it pretty hard." I kneel beside him, brushing snow from his shoulder, my gloved hand lingering there a moment too long. "You scared me, you idiot," I say, but there's no heat in it, just relief and something softer I don't want to name. He catches my wrist, his grip light but firm, and looks up at me. His face close now, snow clinging to his lashes. "Sorry," he says, quieter, his breath warm against the cold air between us. "Didn't mean to." For a second we're still, me kneeling in the snow, him sitting there, his hand on my wrist, the mountain silent around us. His eyes hold mine, dark and steady, and I feel that pull again, stronger now, tugging at something deep in my gut. I pull back, standing quick, and offer him a hand. "Come on, hotshot. Let's finish this." He takes it, his fingers warm through our gloves, and hauls himself up, brushing snow off his pants. "You're still winning," he says, grinning, but there's a weight to his voice, a softness that sticks with me as we click back into our skis. That night, the cabin feels smaller, the walls pressing in as we shed our gear and collapse onto the couch. I light the wood stove, the flames crackling to life, and Thane sprawls beside me, his leg brushing mine as he stretches out. We're quiet at first, the day's adrenaline fading, replaced by a stillness that feels charged, heavy with something unspoken. "Today was good," he says finally, his voice low, cutting through the hum of the fire. "Even with me wiping out." I laugh soft and dry. "You made it interesting, I'll give you that." He shifts, turning to face me, his arm resting along the back of the couch, fingers grazing my shoulder through my sweater. "You're pretty tough, Ma. Keeping up with me like that." "Had to," I say, meeting his gaze. "Can't let you think you've outgrown me yet." His smile fades a little, replaced by something steadier, more intent. "I'd never outgrow you," he says, and the way he says it, quiet, raw, makes my breath catch. I look away, staring at the flames, trying to shake the warmth spreading through me. It's just Thane, I tell myself. My son, my kid, the boy I've raised. But he's not a boy anymore, and that truth sits heavy between us, a line I'm not sure where to draw. "Ma," he says after a while, his voice softer now, almost hesitant. "You ever think about, I don't know, doing this more? Just us?" I turn back to him, his face half lit by the fire, shadows dancing across his jaw. "What, skiing?" "Yeah," he says, but his eyes say something else. Something deeper, something I'm not ready to face. "Or just being out here, away from everything." I swallow, my throat tight. "Maybe," I say, keeping it vague, but my heart's pounding now, and I don't know why. Or maybe I do, and that scares me more. He doesn't push, just nods, his fingers brushing my shoulder again, light but deliberate. We sit there, the fire popping, the night pressing in, and I feel it. That shift, that pull growing stronger with every quiet moment we share. The next day is a blur of snow and speed. The slopes busier now with weekend crowds. I push myself harder, trying to outrun the thoughts crowding my head, but Thane's always there. Beside me, behind me. His presence a constant hum I can't ignore. We take a break mid-morning, perched on a ridge overlooking the valley, the sun breaking through clouds to paint the snow gold. I sit, catching my breath, and he drops beside me, close enough that our thighs touch through our gear. "Pretty up here," he says, his voice soft, his eyes on the horizon. "Yeah, I agree, but I'm looking at him, the way the light catches his hair, the way his chest rises and falls, steady and sure." He turns, catching me staring, and that grin comes back, slow and knowing. "What?" he asks, teasing again, but there's heat in it now, a spark that makes my pulse jump. "Nothing," I lie, turning away, but my cheeks burn, and I know he sees it. We ski down after that, slower this time, the silence between us thick with something new. Back at the cabin I cook, stew simmering on the stove, the air thick with spices, and he hovers, leaning against the counter, watching me chop carrots with quick, practiced cuts. "You're good at that," he says, his voice low, close enough that I feel his breath on my neck. "Years of practice," I say, keeping my eyes on the knife, but my hands falter, just for a second. He steps closer, his hip brushing mine as he reaches for a carrot, popping it in his mouth. "Tastes better when you make it," he says, and when I look up, his eyes are on me, dark, steady, too close. "Thane," I start, my voice shaky, but I don't finish. I don't know what to say, what I even want to say. He doesn't move, just watches me, and the air feels too small, too warm. "Yeah, Ma," he says, soft, waiting. I turn back to the stove, stirring the pot, trying to steady myself. "Dinner's almost ready," I mutter, and he steps back, but I feel his eyes on me still, burning through the quiet. It happens the next night, after another day on the slopes. We're back at the cabin, the fire roaring, a bottle of red wine open between us, something I'd stashed for rare nights like this. I pour, my hands steady despite the hum in my chest, and we sit on the couch, closer than we should be, our legs brushing under the quilt I've draped over us. To Powderhorn, he says, raising his glass, his voice warm. To Powderhorn, I echo, clinking mine against his, the wine sharp on my tongue. We drink in silence, the firelight flickering across his face, softening the edges of him. He's beautiful, I think, too beautiful maybe, and the thought jolts me wrong and right all at once. You're different this year, I say suddenly, the words slipping out before I can catch them. He tilts his head, curious. How? I don't know, I admit, swirling the wine in my glass. Just older. Steadier. You're different too, he says, his voice low, his eyes locking on mine. Lighter. Like you're letting go of something. I laugh dry and shaky. Maybe I am. He shifts, his knee pressing harder against mine. His hand resting on the couch, fingers brushing my thigh through the quilt. I like it, he says, and there's no teasing now. Just truth, raw and bare. My breath catches and I should pull away. I know I should, but I don't. I lean into him just a fraction, and when he tilts his head, his lips brush mine. Soft, tentative, a question I don't stop. It deepens, slow and warm. His hand sliding to my waist, pulling me closer, my fingers finding his chest, the steady thud of his heart under my palm. We break apart, breathless, and I whisper, "No one can know, Thane. Ever. I swear," he breathes, his forehead against mine. His hand tightening on my waist. Just us. The fire burns low, the night wrapping us tight, and I know we've crossed a line. One we can't uncross, one I don't want to. It's wrong, it's dangerous, but it's ours, hidden in the snow. The rest of the week blurs. Days on the slopes, nights by the fire, stolen touches when no one's looking. We don't name it, don't talk about it, but it's there. In every glance, every brush of his hand, every quiet moment we steal. When we leave Powderhorn, the cabin fading in the rearview, I feel it still. The weight of him, the warmth, a secret I'll carry long after the snow melts. The drive back from Powderhorn is quiet, the hum of the engine filling the space where words should be. Thane's beside me, his head tilted against the window, eyes tracing the blur of snow-dusted pines whipping past. My hands grip the wheel tighter than they need to, the leather creaking under my gloves, and I keep my gaze fixed on the road ahead, on the gray ribbon of asphalt cutting through the white. The cabin's long gone now, a speck in the rearview, but what happened there clings to me like the cold seeping through the car's vents. We don't talk about it. Not the kiss by the fire, not the nights that followed, not the way his hands found mine under the quilt or how I let them stay. It's a weight we carry in silence, heavy and warm, a secret stitched into the fabric of us. I tell myself it's the mountain air, the isolation, the wine, anything to make it less real, less mine. But every time I glance at him, his profile sharp against the glass, his breath fogging the window, I know it's more than that. It's us, and it's terrifying. Missoula's gonna feel weird after this, he says finally, breaking the quiet. His voice low and rough like he's been chewing on the words for miles. Yeah, I manage, my throat tight. Back to reality. He shifts, turning to me, and I feel his eyes before I see them. Dark, steady, searching. Does it have to be? I don't answer right away, the question hanging there, sharp as the peaks we've left behind. My chest tightens, a mix of fear and something softer, something I've been running from since that first night. Thane, I start, my voice unsteady. What we did. I know. He cuts in, quick but soft, like he's afraid I'll say too much. I know it's complicated. But it happened, Ma. And I don't regret it. I swallow hard, my knuckles whitening on the wheel. You should, I say, but it's weak, more for me than him. Because I don't regret it either. Not fully. And that's the part that keeps me up, staring at the ceiling while the house settles around me. He reaches over, his hand resting on my thigh, light but deliberate, and I flinch. Not from disgust, but from the heat that flares where he touches me. Don't, I whisper, but I don't pull away, and he doesn't move his hand. It's just us, he says, echoing that promise from the cabin. His voice a tether pulling me back to those nights. No one else has to know. I nod barely because he's right. No one will know. No one can. But that doesn't erase the line we've crossed, the one I see every time I look at him now. Not just my son, but something else, something I can't unsee. Back in Missoula, the house feels too big, too empty. Thane heads back to Boise the next day. His duffel slung over his shoulder, that grin flashing as he hugs me goodbye. "See you soon, Ma," he says, his arms tight around me, and I hold on a little longer than I should, breathing him in, snow and pine and something uniquely his. "Drive safe," I tell him, stepping back, my smile forced but real enough to fool anyone watching. He nods, climbs into his truck, and then he's gone, taillights fading down the street. The days stretch after that, a slow crawl back to normal. I bury myself in work. Logos and layouts. The glow of my screen a distraction from the ache that lingers. But it's there, always. When I sip coffee alone in the kitchen, when I pass his old room, when the first snow falls outside and I think of Powderhorn. I don't call him more than usual, don't text beyond the quick check-ins, but every message from him lands like a spark, lighting up something I try to smother. Spring comes, then summer. The mountains a distant memory under a blazing sun. Thane's home for break, sprawling on the couch with a beer, telling me about classes and girls he's met. Casual, easy, like nothing's changed. But it has, and we both feel it. In the way our eyes catch and hold, in the silences that stretch too long, in the brush of his shoulder against mine when he passes me in the hall. One night, late, he finds me on the porch, the air thick with June heat, crickets humming in the dark. I'm nursing a glass of wine, barefoot, the wood cool under my feet. He sits beside me, close enough that our arms touch, and says nothing for a while, just watches the stars prick the sky. "Missed you," he says finally. His voice soft, raw, and I know he doesn't just mean the months apart. "Missed you too," I admit, my guard down, the wine loosening my tongue. He turns, his face close now, shadowed but familiar, and I see it. That spark, that pull, still there after all this time. "Ma," he starts, hesitant. "What if?" "No," I cut him off, sharper than I mean to, setting my glass down hard. "We can't, Thane. Not again." He nods, slow, his jaw tight, but his hand finds mine, fingers lacing through, and I don't pull away. "Okay," he says, quiet, resigned. "But I'm not sorry it happened." I squeeze his hand, a silent answer, because I'm not either. Not entirely. It's ours, that week in the snow, a piece of us no one else can touch. But it's done, locked away with the mountains, and I tell myself that's enough. Years later, Powderhorn calls again. A friend's wedding up there, a chance to ski those slopes one more time. Thane's 25 now, taller somehow, steadier, with a job in Boise and a life I'm only part of in snapshots. He meets me there, his grin the same but tempered, and we ski like old times. Fast, fearless, laughing into the wind. At night, by the lodge fire, he sits across from me, a beer in hand, and we talk, easy, light, about everything but that winter. His eyes catch mine though, and I see it still. A flicker, banked but alive, a memory we'll never speak aloud. "Love you, Ma," he says as we part. His hug warm, familiar, safe. "Love you too," I reply, and I mean it, deep and true, beyond the snow, beyond the line we crossed and left behind. The mountains stand silent as I drive away, their peaks sharp against the sky, holding our secret in their depths. It's enough, I think. Has to be.